in my book is the big lie that says that the only proper response to economic downturns is aggressive government programs. How absurd that is. We have a history in this country. And one of the problems that you have with these lies about America is the idea that Franklin Roosevelt got us out of the Depression by spending money. It's an incredible story, but it's not true. Franklin Roosevelt was elected. He came to power. The unemployment rate was 17.4%. In 1938, after 5 years of huge spending, 5 years of huge, the unemployment rate was 17.8%. By the way, I mean, imagine what that means. We're 7.6% now, and it's terribly painful. But 17.8% after 5 years of Roosevelt tripling the national budget in peacetime, we have something like that going on in Washington right now. And it's insane. The whole idea of stimulus, immediate stimulus, when there is at least $150 billion of this money that won't even be spent until after 2011, how immediate is that? This is a scam, and it's a fraud, and it's based upon historical ignorance, based upon historical lies. The idea that somehow we can trust government to make decisions with our money. We fought a revolution over this. I mean, it's an incredible thing when you think about it. I was writing about this in my book, that the people who made the American Revolution, no taxation without representation, what were they fighting about? They were being asked to pay 2 to 3 cents extra on a dollar. And 25,000 Americans died in that war, in a population of 3 million. Because unbelievable people died rather than, why? Because they understood that a government that can take the fruits of your labor makes you a slave. You want proof that Abraham Lincoln would not be on the side of the left right now? He understood that the basic principle of slavery is you toil and you labor and you earn bread, and as Lincoln said, and someone else eats it. If you toil and you labor, and the majority of your toil and labor is taken away by the government, and you have no say over how they spend it, then what are you, 55% a slave, if that's the tax rate you would pay, and that's the tax rate we all will pay? You know that in California right now, in California they just agreed today, to a 1% increase in the state sales tax. In the lower 48, they have this obnoxious thing called sales taxes in the state, which you guys have been able. And in California, where they have 11% income tax, they have now a 5% income tax surcharge on every single Californian as part of the budget deal. You think you've got problems up here? You've got, bless the Republicans in the legislature, bless Governor Palin. You should take a look down the coast. But it's a very basic thing. Money is life energy. We trade moments of our life. I spend too much time away from my family. I do. Many of us do. Many of us are absent too often. Why? Because we're trying to earn money, trying to pay the bills, trying to provide for the future, trying to put some money away, trying to make up for the fact that 401ks have now become 201ks. We've all heard that. We're all trying to do that. That's life energy. And the government comes like Count Dracula to suck out more of the life energy, and they will. Here is a basic thing that I just realized this on the plane coming up here. How did we get into this financial crisis? What happened to us? What happened to us is a lot of Americans took out more debt than they could handle, particularly when it came to buying homes. They borrowed more money than they could possibly pay off. So how are we supposed to deal with that problem? The government will borrow more money than it could ever possibly pay off. How crazy is that? How unfair is it to our children and to our grandchildren? And it is up to conservatives and to Republicans to say so clearly. We may not win every legislative fight. We may win very few legislative fights right now. We didn't do well in the election or as well as we should have. But the truth of the matter is that speaking truth about preserving our liberty, the same kind of liberties the patriots died for, taxation, money, life energy. Look, it's very simple. It's very simple. The bigger the government, the less freedom. The smaller the government, the more freedom. Abraham Lincoln was opposed. Abraham Lincoln was opposed to slavery. He would be opposed to a slavery that puts a 50 and 60% tax burden when you combine state, local, and federal on typical Americans. He would oppose that and see that for the slavery it is, and would take his stand with the party of freedom, which is the party that you support, the party known as the Grand Old Party, which is going to be a grand new party. And that brings me to the third point and the third lie. The lie about Lincoln being an atheist and Lincoln, it's true that Lincoln never joined a church. He had problems with organized religion. He did. He had problems with churches. But he was all his life a God-haunted man. You can see it in his scriptural references. He memorized the Bible. He loved the Bible and Shakespeare. And the stories you heard about are true. When he was a child, those are the two books that he had. And he would stay up at night by candlelight memorizing Shakespeare and memorizing the Bible. And he could recite whole passages. In my book, The Shadow of Presidents, I talk about Lincoln had a staff of 2 with which he won the Civil War. President Obama has a staff of 1,700. And we'll see. But Lincoln's staff of 2 were upstairs at the White House. Lincoln would walk down the hall and he'd come there and he'd start reciting the Bible. Or he'd start reciting his favorite scenes from Shakespeare, wearing his nightshirt, because he loved this material. Ronald White, in his book about Lincoln, found this new set of notes. Lincoln used to write notes to himself, and he would put them inside his hat, literally. And Ronald White found this new set of notes that had not been looked at before, where Lincoln wrote notes to himself with incredible eloquence, about 2 paragraphs, trying to figure out why God had brought the war between the states. And those notes and those thoughts later became his great second inaugural address, where he talked about God's purposes very specifically. So many of his greatest orations were biblical. Many people don't know it, but his famous speech in 1858, "A house divided against itself cannot stand," that's a biblical citation. That's from the Old Testament. And Lincoln was haunted by God, and he had no doubt at all that religion, particularly given the fact that the whole abolition movement, there would have been no abolition movement in the United States of America without believing Christians. It is one of the great glories of our country that it was people of faith, starting with Mennonites and Quakers in Pennsylvania in the 1680s, when no one questioned slavery, no one. They started the world's first anti-slavery society in 1688. And then it went on. Quakers in Philadelphia. Benjamin Franklin, head of the American Anti-Slavery Society. The point that Lincoln understood, that the Republican Party has to understand, is no, our nation has never had a specific denominational established religion. But we have always had leaders who understood the value of religious faith and how profoundly our nation and our lives and our people depend upon it. The third big lie about America that I write about in my book is a big lie that says this nation was founded as a secular nation, not a Christian nation. I'm sorry, it wasn't. The